Welcome everyone! Today I present you our research project behind Potemkin's villages, Crimea between art and crisis. It is based upon qualitative fieldwork and results in an autoethnographic essay as well as a fictocritical film. The focus of this presentation lies on the film project with the title Crossroads Crimea. For more information on the whole project, you can visit the website crossroadscrimea.com. Now I will elaborate on the different methodologies of visual anthropology which were employed in our film project. In the first part, I will give you an introduction to the research project. The second part consists of a quick journey through the history of visual anthropology. And at last, I will give you some impressions of our film Crossroads Crimea, while explaining our fictocritical approach. This is Tatjana Hofmann, with whom I carried out the research, which followed participants of the so-called Bosporus Forum, a blend of arts festival and conference meeting of the Crimean Peninsula.
Боспорский форум современной культуры. Это словосочетание, ставшее притчей во языцах и устоявшимся культурологическим термином в среде художественной элиты СНГ и отечественной эмиграции, периодически звучащим на радио «Свобода», «Голосе Америки», радио России, «Маяке», все еще остается загадкой для многих жителей Крыма и даже города Керчь, где вот уже третий год проходит это культурное действо, экспериментально соединяющее в себе признаки научной конференции и литературно-художественного фестиваля, и участие в котором принимают все более широкие круги известных культурных деятелей СНГ и с каждым разом все более дальнего.
The forum took place every couple of years in Simferopol and in Kerch since 1993. It is meant as a dialogue platform for the peninsula's artistic community and cultural professionals from all the sides that are at odds over its future: Russia, Ukraine, and the Crimean Tatars. It focuses on humanistic ideas instead of violent politics. Thus, the founder, Igor Sidorenko, introduced the concept of Geopoetics, which signifies a semantic field of poetry, prose, philosophy, and conceptual art.
Игорь, Сид, добрый день. Я шла к вам навстречу, мы должны были сегодня с вами встретиться и поговорить, а, наверное, помешала вашей деятельности, наверное, тоже какой-то свой бизнес, да? Вот я смотрю, стекло, зеркала, хозтовары, и вы с зеркалом.
Нет, вы знаете, мы просто увидели только что эту надпись и решили начинать именно здесь. Речь идет о художественной акции поэтической партии.
То есть сегодня... я не ослышалась, поэтическая или политическая партия?
Именно поэтической партии. То есть в каждой стране много различных политических партий, а поэтическая партия, она может быть только одна. Это просто всего лишь часть общества, озабоченная самопознанием и творческим самовыражением.
It's a way of space poetization. Under the conditions of a spatial turn, it found its way into areas of non-traditional geography, literature and art. Geopoetical actions and literature represent an important trend in the formation of post-socialist geospatial discourse. Instead of being based upon meta-narratives, they gravitate toward performance, street art, and fragmented text genres like the poem or the essay. Our film is also heavily influenced by the concept of geopoetics. However, our methodology is based upon ethnographic exploration through narrative biographic interviews with forum participants, as well as expert interviews with museum workers. The interviews were conducted between 2016 and 2018. A third stay in Crimea was not possible due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On a theoretical level, we wanted to understand whether we deal with postmodern erosion of identity, with post-colonial hybridity, or with the resurgence of ethnic-based notions of identity within nationalistic frameworks. In front of the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014, the question emerges: how can geopoetics reactivate its peacekeeping dynamics today, when it is badly needed? Anthropologists have played a pioneering role in the usage of cameras in scientific contexts since the 1890s. As Paul Handley puts it, the early era until the 1920s was a period of tentative beginnings, sporadic activity and blurred genres. Robert Flaherty's Nanook of the North from 1922 is a good example of an early ethnographic film, composed entirely of so-called scenes on demand, portraying Nanook, an Inuit, living on the northern peninsula of Ungava in Quebec. While he was criticized for the scenes on demand, his biased view and neo-colonialistic construction of a filmic reality, as well as his overall misrepresentation of his protagonists and their culture, he nevertheless played an important role in the history of ethnographic filmmaking, although his films would today be characterized as docufiction or drama documentary. This leads us to the discussion of representation. How can an ethnographic film represent reality? How can it construct reality? And what is really true about it?
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, this is a film about trickery and fraud, about lies. Tell it by the fireside or in a marketplace or in a movie. Almost any story is almost certainly some kind of lie. But not this time. No, this is a promise. During the next hour, everything you'll hear from us is really true and based on solid facts.
The discussion of the promise of truth and its representation in writing or film peaked within the discipline of anthropology in the writing culture debate of the 1980s. As Sarah Pink puts it, positivist arguments and realist approaches to knowledge, truth and objectivity were challenged. This debate led to an increasing incorporation of audiovisual material in ethnographic research. One main reason to further this development was the theoretical assumption that audiovisual material is essentially no more subjective or objective than written texts. The problem of representation is far from being neutralized by the usage of cameras in the field. It rather has to be actively engaged in a reflexive mode through the activation of the researcher's own subjectivity while using audiovisual means for knowledge production. But what makes a film ethnographic? David McDougall, an ethnographic filmmaker, gives the following answer.
Well, I see ethnographic film as just a subset of documentary, although it doesn't even have to be documentary. There have been fiction films that you might consider ethnographic films. But for me, an ethnographic film is any film that has the intention of looking at cultural patterns in society. And so it comes at it from that perspective. But it doesn't have to be made by an anthropologist. It simply has to have an interest in ethnography, broadly speaking, and understanding how societies work. And of course, there's a huge overlap with what documentary filmmakers do.
So how to catch those patterns of culture? In our film, we drew from 3 different cinematic methods to gather our information and present our findings: observational cinema, cinema verité, and the essay film. The observational cinema of Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson from the 50s tried to capture its protagonists in everyday life with minimal interference. Also in post-production, it minimalizes the editing process, which is not coerced to tell coherent stories. Thus, their films are mostly comprised of wide-angle long sequence shots.
Ce film n'a pas été joué par des acteurs, mais vécu par des hommes et des femmes qui ont donné des moments de leur existence à une expérience nouvelle de cinéma-vérité.
Another approach in the realm of non-fiction filmmaking has evolved in the work of Jean Rouch and Edgar Morin. In their most famous film, Chronicle of a Summer from 1961, they take on a collaborative and active role.
Tu vois, Morin, l'idée de réunir des gens autour d'une table est une excellente idée. Seulement, je ne sais pas si nous arriverons à enregistrer une conversation aussi normale qu'elle le serait s'il n'y avait pas de caméra.
Enabled through technical innovations such as smaller and portable cameras, they deployed different cinematic techniques in editing as well as recording, such as superimpositions, zoom-ins, the adding of music, as well as different camera movements, which they are famous for. Nevertheless, they always tried to stick to the long sequence shot, as Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead did. Observational cinema and cinema verite can be understood as pushing in the same direction of non-fiction filmmaking, giving the audience an experience of at-hand documentation without using too much of a voice-over commentary. In film theory, both approaches are subsumed under the term of direct cinema. The third and last source of inspiration for our audiovisual work stems from the essay film. It is a genre that blurs the line between non-fictional and fictional filmmaking. One of the most influential films in this genre is Chris Marker's Sans Soleil. The non-fictional footage is heavily edited in a stream of consciousness-like style, while held together with a superimposed fictional voice-over commentary.
At nightfall, the megalopolis breaks down into villages, with its country cemeteries in the shadow of banks, with its stations and temples. Each district of Tokyo once again becomes a tidy, ingenuous little town, nestling amongst the skyscrapers. The small bar in Shinjuku reminded him of that Indian flute whose sound can only be heard by whoever's playing it. He might have cried out as in a Godard film or a Shakespeare play, "Where should this music be?"
To sum up our approach, we can say that we followed the lines during the recordings of observational cinema with minimal interference, while engaging in a participatory verite style with our protagonists, who also gave directions for the film. In post-production, however, we worked within the framework of the essay film, and thus added a voice-over commentary to bring forth some argumentations and contextualizations, while at the same time questioning the modes of representation themselves. In this regard, we coin our approach as fictocritical, a term heavily used by the anthropologist Michael Taussig, who claims that fictocriticism is a combination of theory, storytelling, and fieldwork, and this in unexpected ways. Initially comprised to characterize text-based research, we expand the concept of fictocriticism to audiovisual research, while agreeing with H. Louis Flavel, a literary scientist, that fictocritical practice is concerned with interrogating the violence of representation to legitimately explore what is inevitably left out and or misrepresented through that process, resulting in scenes like the following one, taken from our film Crossroads Crimea.
Was mir auffiel, waren die Farben der Krim, diese leichtfüßigen, eleganten und unaufdringlichen Pastelltöne, die sich mir unter anderem in den arrangierten Süßigkeiten der Halbinsel offenbarten. Als wir im Gespräch mit Produzenten und Kameraleuten waren, äußerten sie immer sehr schnell ihre Vorstellungen über die Farbgestaltung des Films, meist ohne je dort gewesen zu sein oder auch nur ein Bild der Krim vor die Augen bekommen zu haben. Die Rede war von Osteuropa-Kitsch, einer rot-violetten Farbpalette und einer kontrastreich düsteren Stimmung, die gebrochen wird durch die beseelten Blicke leuchtender Augen unserer Protagonisten. Bei der unmittelbaren Aufnahme verzichtet man meist auf eine ausgeprägte Farbgebung. Die Sättigung wird heruntergefahren, dem Kontrast die Kraft genommen. Ein sogenanntes flaches Bild wird angestrebt, damit in der Postproduktion der Gestaltungswille voll ausgelegt werden kann, man die Kontrolle über das Bild behält. Wie soll ich aber Kontrolle ausüben über Farben, die ich mit dem Kameraauge ausgelöscht habe und jetzt durch die Erinnerung zu rekonstruieren versuche? Ich will mich doch nicht mit dem polychromen westeuropäischen Stereotyp über den Osten anfreunden. Ich will mich lediglich zu den Farben verpflichten, die ich sah, und dem Licht versprechen, das mir half zu sehen, und zwar ohne Farbe zu bekennen. Natürlich komme ich nicht los davon, Kontrolle über das Farbkonstrukt ausüben zu wollen, Kontrolle über dieses Konstrukt einer filmisch oder literarisch festgehaltenen Krim. Der Traum einer absoluten Macht und deren Kontrolle, der sich geopolitisch äußert, schwappt auch auf die Geopoetik über. Ich meine damit lediglich, dass ich die gezeigten Farben und deren Darstellung nicht ganz kontrollieren kann und im Moment des Sprechens über diesen Kontrollverlust, wenn ich Kontrolle, so zumindest Lust gewinne. Darum sind die Farben, die hier sind, immer lustvolle und vielleicht auch voyeuristische, elegant und verführerisch wie das Pastell der Süßigkeiten.
В месте, где архитектурное сооружение, да, выстраивалось в течение нескольких столетий, то его начало, его основная архитектурная доминанта строилась в период, когда вот эта фреска создавалась в Милане, в монастыре Санта-Мария-дель-Грация на северной стене. И связь между этим сооружением и этой фреской опосредованно проходит по канонам ордена вертящихся дервишей Мевлеви, да, 15 века. Вот что объединяет это сооружение и вот эту фреску. И это уникально, потому что вся композиция, структура архитектурная этого здания выстроена звездочетом придворным Менгли-Гирея согласно розе ветров и расположению по звездам. То есть мы видели, как расположена строго на восток-запад, как на юг ориентирована стена солнечная, да, и движение солнца прочитывается по цепям. Вот точно такая же задача была поставлена Леонардо да Винчи во время создания этой фрески. Он то же самое учитывал. То есть, естественно, ни Леонардо не знал о Занджерло-Медресе, ни строители Занджерло-Медресе не знали о Леонардо, естественно. Но в силу того, что Леонардо делал зеркальную копию канона вертящихся дервишей суфийского ордена Мевляна.
Thank you for your attention. I hope you will have a nice day.